All right, so this is a tutorial video about how to make Out of the Park more challenging if you find yourself winning too easily. Out of the Park, like any computer game, video game, etc., you can find ways to exploit it. You can beat it consistently over time if you play it enough. This game draws us in for long periods of time to the point where we get really good at it. And I've set up rules for myself when I do franchises like the one I'm in right now with the Orioles, where to make the game more challenging for myself. Shout out to the guy who left a comment on one of the videos saying he could win a championship with any team in 2 years or less, which, I think there's a good bit of stuff that's outside of your control. I don't know if anybody can guarantee that, but if you feel like you can win the championship too easily or the trades are too easy, some of the rosters that people put up for their teams, just like, how did they get this team together? Well, maybe it's time for them to challenge themselves a little bit more at this game. So this video is if you're in that boat and you want the game to be more challenging. I'm just going to go over the things that I do to try to challenge myself. So the first thing is trade difficulty, because the default trade settings are just way too easily. So you go to game settings and the AI settings, and then you put the trade difficulty on very hard, and you put the preference on heavily favors prospects. I have seen some people think that it's too easy to get major league players if you do this because teams like your prospects too much. I haven't really found that be the case, but intuitively, logically, that makes sense that maybe neutral's the better play there. But I've always done heavily favors prospects, and I found it to work best in terms of the computer not giving up crazy bad trades, because you can really find trades that just should not be done. And even with this trade setting that I have it on, you'll still find some trades where it's just like, man, what? Like, why are you guys willing to do this? And sometimes I won't make those trades if it just makes no sense for the other team. But in general, just having on these settings, I feel like is a good enough guideline for the trades. So next is waivers. So I'm at opening day here, so there are a bunch of guys on waivers. And let's go ahead to the waiver wire. Let's go to all players. So what I do, the basic rule that I put in place is anyone younger than 25, I won't claim. At beginning of the season, this is not as big of a problem. You can see there's only one guy. He's not great. Maybe he shouldn't be on waivers as a 24-year-old, but it's not crazy that he is. But you will, well, I'll get to that other point in a second, but you will find, particularly in the offseason, I find teams will just randomly have put prospects on their 40-man and then decide they don't want them on there anymore, and they take them off. I don't know if they're taking off because of their overall rating being lower or whatever, but, like here, let me find like a couple of egregious examples in my game. So searching for Keibert Ruiz here, who is a catching prospect in real life in the Dodgers organization. You said he was claimed on waivers from the Dodgers in January of 2021. So in January of 2021, he was 22, right? And he hopped right in, and he's been the Mets starting catcher for a decade since then, a guy they got on waivers. Now, if you go to his history, in 2021, he was the number 71 prospect in baseball. A dude like that should never be on waivers, would never be on waivers. And so that's why, and I found this happens particularly in the offseason. Young guys who don't have major league experience and are on the 40-man are taken off the 40-man, and you'll find top 100 prospects out there that way. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I don't claim a guy younger than 25, is because once a guy's 25, I feel like even if he is a decent prospect, he's not really going to be a top 100 prospect on waivers necessarily. So if they're under 25, don't claim them on waivers. But there's also other exceptions to that, like in this sim, Ohtani, who is now retired, was claimed on waivers. Here, let me show it to you. Not making this up. He was, where is it? There's his extension. I think it was in 2024. There it is. 6/6/24 was claimed off waivers by Cleveland while with Los Angeles. Now, Ohtani is a top player in this game, as everybody knows. 2022 Cy Young. 21 Cy Young, 22 Cy Young, 23 Cy Young. So he was the 3-time defending Cy Young champ and a 2021 MVP. And he was claimed off of waivers in June of the following year as he was the 3-time defending Cy Young winner. That's just crazy. That's absurd. That shouldn't happen. I actually didn't notice it happen until like 2 months after it did, when all of a sudden I was playing Cleveland and I think Ohtani was pitching and I was like, what? And then I saw waivers. So now this is an egregious example. You don't normally see it with veteran players that are this good. I'm not sure what happened there. It wasn't like LA was out of money or anything like that. I don't know. The timing is right around the draft, and sometimes teams will look to get rid of money to be able to sign their draft picks, but clearly they should be doing something other than trading the 3-time reigning Cy Young winner. So, and if I had caught it right when it happened, I probably would have reversed it, but it was too late by that point. There was no turning back. So that's another thing on waivers. Sometimes guys over 25 that shouldn't be on waivers are. So I wouldn't have claimed Ohtani if I had seen this. I would have taken him off waivers. And same thing with the Rule 5 draft, which I'm not at the right point in the season for that. But with the Rule 5 draft, I do the same thing. I don't take anybody under 25, and even sometimes 25 isn't a big enough cutoff. 26, I think, is probably a safer cutoff for that. But I'll take 25-year-olds if they actually are like borderline major league players. But you will definitely find the same thing with prospects like I did with Ruiz. You'll find very good prospects out there in the Rule 5 draft. Let me see if I can, I can't remember how to spell this game. So there was a prospect that I traded to the Padres. Here he is. So he's a 55 potential. He's 27 now. He hasn't done a ton. But in like 2027, he was the number 79 prospect in baseball, and he was available in the Rule 5 draft, which is just crazy. He should have been claimed. He wasn't, and I certainly wasn't going to claim him. You'll find that with the Rule 5 draft. Too many prospects out there. The next thing is now when you go to make trades, you will, I won't be able to, I don't have a specific example to pull up for you. Oh, well, for some reason, there's a trade here. Okay, so the Make This Work Now button, right? When you hit this, you'll generally get a bunch of players, and sometimes, especially later in the season, if you have, a veteran in your minor league system just to fill out your roster, like a 28-year-old in A-ball because you needed a first baseman, whatever, and he's demolishing A-ball because he's maybe like a AAA player, you will find that the computer will accept those players as part of a trade when they're just looking for one more player. If there's a minor leaguer who is not on my 40-man roster and he's 27 or older, I ignore them on the Make This Work Now button. That's something I started doing more recently in this sim as I noticed more and more, every year there were 3 or 4 guys in my minor league system who were tearing it up as veterans at a level, and the computer's like, sure, we'll take him as a prospect or as a player in this trade instead of a prospect that actually has value. So I stopped doing that. If the Make This Work Now button, if they're not on my 40-man, they're 27 or older, I ignore it. And the last thing I do is with pre-arbitration eligible players. Actually, let me go to my front office here, my salaries. I have Franklin Sanchez is my center fielder. He starts arbitration next year, so he's what we call pre-arbitration. And so with pre-arb players or players who are in their first year of arbitration, you will sometimes see them willing to, and this guy's a pretty good player. He's a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. He put up 3.3 WAR in just 126 games in his rookie year. He's a good player. He's not going to be a superstar, but he's going to be a good player. And he's willing to sign an extension for 8 years and $61 million, which for this guy isn't totally egregious because he's not a superstar. And, Ozzie Albies in real life signed a contract that was, way under market, kind of like this. But there are too many good young players, as I've seen it happen with like top 10 prospects where they're willing to do deals like this when they're pre-arb. So in order to do a deal with a guy who is pre-arb or in his first year of arbitration, one, the dude has to be open to it. Like, see how he's suggesting this? So that's step one. If they're not suggesting it, I don't pursue a multi-year deal. The second one is there is one major league contract that I use as the barometer for any pre-arb or first-year arb player, and that is Ronald Acuña's contract. Ronald Acuna signed an 8-year, $100 million deal with the Braves after his first year in the majors, where they overpaid a bit for, he made $1 million in the 2 seasons where he would have been making the league minimum of like $570 or whatever it is. And then arbitration, he made $5, $15, and $17. And then, so they paid him more than he probably would have made in some of these years, although maybe not with the arbitration, but we didn't know that yet. He only had 1 year under his belt. So they paid more for the years he would have been in arbitration or in the league minimum, and they paid less for the free agent years, $17 million. So eight years, $100 million, $12.5 million per year over 8 years. That's what I use as the baseline. If I'm going to sign a guy who's pre-arb or first year eligible, that's the minimum I have to sign him to. And sometimes guys will will want something that's worth that much money. But, I signed Mario Mendares, who was like an MVP caliber player for me, to a contract. And it was his 9-year, $153 million. So, he wanted well over what Acuna wanted by the time I got to extending him. Bob Maldonado, I think a similar thing. 8 years, $107 million contract. So pretty similar to the Acuna contract. And I also do not include option years. If I want option years, I go over the 8, but I will give them opt-outs if they want it. Sometimes they do. So those are some of the things that I do to make the game more challenging. Hopefully, if you've been playing the game long enough and you want more of a challenge, these are some suggestions that will help you.